The old community center smelled like dust, burned coffee, and forgotten dreams the night Daniel Harper unlocked its cracked front doors for the first time. Rain hammered the streets outside while flickering fluorescent lights buzzed weakly above peeling paint and broken chairs stacked against the walls. Somewhere in the darkness, water dripped steadily into a bucket with hollow metallic echoes. Daniel stood motionless in the silence, holding the eviction notice still folded in his jacket pocket, wondering how life had collapsed this far. Have you ever walked into a broken place and realized it looked exactly how you felt inside? 3 months earlier, Daniel worked as a senior operations manager at Vance Dynamics, one of Seattle's fastest-growing startup companies. Long hours, endless meetings, empty promises about loyalty and teamwork. Then his wife Rachel died suddenly from a brain aneurysm at 34 years old. Everything after that became survival. Daniel stopped sleeping properly. Bills piled up. His 8-year-old daughter Sophie developed panic attacks after losing her mother. Most mornings she begged him not to leave for work because she was terrified another parent might disappear too. But grief does not pause corporate schedules. One Monday morning, Daniel arrived 20 minutes late after calming Sophie through another breakdown in the school parking lot. CEO Vanessa Vance humiliated him in front of the entire conference room. "If you can't manage your personal failures," she said coldly, "you can't manage my company." Nobody defended him. 2 weeks later, he was gone. Now he stood inside the abandoned community center the city had practically given away because nobody wanted it anymore. The roof leaked. The heating barely worked. The neighborhood itself had been ignored for years. Vanessa laughed openly when she heard Daniel bought the property. A place for failures, she mocked during a networking event. Perfect for him. The word spread quickly through Seattle's business circles. Daniel heard all of it. But every night after Sophie fell asleep on an old couch inside the tiny office, he kept working anyway. What would you do if the entire world already decided you were finished? One evening Sophie wandered into the main room carrying crayons while Daniel repaired folding tables under hanging work lights. "What's this place gonna be?" she asked softly. Daniel looked around the empty building. Honestly, he did not know yet. Then he noticed a flyer taped near the entrance, "Job fair cancelled due to lack of funding." And suddenly something clicked. The next morning, Daniel placed a handmade sign outside the building. Second Start Center Jobs. Training. Free coffee. No judgment. The first week, only 3 people showed up. A laid-off factory worker. A single mother trying to rebuild a resume after years away raising children. A teenage dropout sleeping in shelters. Daniel helped all of them personally. By the second month, dozens arrived daily. People abandoned by companies. People buried under debt. People told they were too old, too inexperienced, too broken, too late. Daniel listened to every story because he understood humiliation now. Understood what happens when society quietly decides someone no longer matters. Have you ever noticed how desperately people want one person to believe they still have value? Sophie colored welcome signs for the front lobby every morning before school. Free sandwiches appeared anonymously from local bakeries. Volunteer teachers offered computer classes at night. A retired accountant started helping struggling families organize finances. Slowly, the building filled with something rare. Hope. 6 months later, national media arrived. The Failure Center, Vanessa mocked, had become Seattle's fastest-growing workforce nonprofit, helping thousands find jobs and housing. Donations poured in. Corporate sponsors called daily. And directly across downtown, Vance Dynamics quietly began losing employees. Because workers were exhausted, disposable, invisible. One rainy afternoon, Vanessa herself walked into the community center unexpectedly. The entire room fell silent. Daniel looked up from helping a young father prepare for an interview. Vanessa scanned the crowded building carefully. Parents drinking coffee. Volunteers teaching classes. Children laughing near donated bookshelves. "You built all this?" she asked quietly. Daniel nodded once. Vanessa looked genuinely unsettled. "I don't understand," she admitted. "There's no profit model here." Daniel leaned back slowly. "That's because not everything valuable makes money first." The sentence landed hard. Because somewhere deep down, Vanessa already knew her billion-dollar company felt emptier than this leaking old building ever would. A young woman suddenly approached Daniel holding papers with tears in her eyes. "I got the job," she whispered emotionally. Daniel smiled instantly. "I knew you would." The woman hugged him tightly before leaving. Vanessa watched the interaction silently. And for the first time in years, something uncomfortable moved through her chest. Not jealousy. Regret. That night heavy rain flooded Seattle streets while Daniel locked up the center after everyone left. Sophie slept curled on the office couch beneath a donated blanket. Vanessa remained near the doorway longer than expected. Finally she spoke softly. "When my father built Vance Dynamics, he used to say weak people slow companies down." Daniel looked toward sleeping Sophie. "Maybe," he answered quietly. "But abandoned people eventually break societies." The silence after that felt painfully honest. Vanessa lowered her eyes. Because for the first time in her career, she realized success built without compassion eventually becomes another kind of failure. Before leaving, she glanced once more around the center filled with worn furniture, exhausted families, and fragile second chances. Then she whispered something Daniel never expected to hear from her. "I think I forgot what people actually need." Daniel looked at her carefully. Outside, sirens echoed through rainy streets while warm light spilled from the windows of the old building everyone once called worthless. And standing there beside his sleeping daughter, Daniel finally understood something life-changing. The people society labels as failures are often the ones capable of rebuilding humanity when everyone else stops caring. Rain pressed softly against the windows of the Second Start Center 3 months later while Daniel Harper stood in the crowded lobby watching volunteers hand out winter coats to families who had nowhere else to go. The old building no longer smelled like dust and abandonment. Now it smelled like soup kitchens, fresh coffee, wet jackets drying near heaters, and exhausted people finally breathing easier for the first time in months. Hope has a scent when you've lived without it long enough. Have you ever walked into a place and felt your chest loosen because nobody there expected you to pretend anymore? Sophie ran through the hallway laughing with 2 other children while paper snowflakes hung crookedly from the ceiling. Daniel watched her carefully, still stunned by how different she looked now compared to the frightened little girl who once cried every morning terrified of losing him too. Healing happened quietly sometimes, not in dramatic moments, in small safe ones. "Dad," Sophie shouted proudly. "Mrs. Lewis said my drawing is going in the front office." Daniel smiled. "That's a big promotion." She grinned before racing away again. Behind him, a familiar voice spoke softly. "You built something extraordinary here." Daniel turned slowly. Vanessa Vance stood near the entrance wearing a dark wool coat, rainwater still glistening on her sleeves. But she looked different now. Less polished, less untouchable, more tired. Over the last few months, Vance Dynamics had continued collapsing publicly. Employees leaked stories online about burnout, panic attacks, impossible schedules, and mass resignations. Investors grew nervous. Headlines turned brutal. Meanwhile, the failure center she once mocked kept growing. Daniel crossed his arms gently. "You here to inspect the competition?" Vanessa gave a weak smile that disappeared quickly. "I'm here because I don't know how to fix what I broke." The honesty surprised him. A volunteer passed carrying donated food boxes while an elderly man near the fireplace quietly practiced interview questions with another worker. Vanessa watched everything carefully. "They trust you," she whispered. Daniel looked around the room. "No." He shook his head slightly. "They trust that nobody here sees them as disposable." That sentence hit visibly hard. Because deep down, Vanessa knew exactly how many people she treated like numbers instead of human beings. What would you do if success suddenly forced you to confront the damage you caused climbing toward it? Vanessa followed Daniel into the small office near the back hallway. Sophie's drawings covered the walls beside unpaid utility notices and volunteer schedules. A real place. Messy. Alive. Vanessa sat slowly across from him. "My father had a heart attack last month." Daniel's expression softened slightly. "He survived," she added quietly. "But while he was in recovery," she swallowed hard. "Do you know what he asked me?" Daniel waited. She asked if the stock price recovered. Silence settled heavily between them. Vanessa laughed bitterly, eyes filling with emotion. "Not if I was okay. Not if I was lonely. Just the company." For the first time, Daniel saw something beneath her coldness. Not cruelty. Conditioning. A lifetime spent believing love had to be earned through performance. "My mother used to say something different," Daniel said softly. She believed people deserve care before they earn anything. Vanessa looked down immediately, tears threatening now. I don't think anyone ever taught me that. Outside the office, children laughed loudly near the lobby Christmas tree while volunteers served hot chocolate in paper cups. Life. Simple, imperfect life. Vanessa wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed. I spent years thinking strength meant never slowing down long enough to feel anything. And now, her voice cracked slightly. Now I think I built an empire full of exhausted people pretending not to drown. Daniel understood that feeling more than she realized. After Rachel died, he spent months pretending survival meant shutting emotions off completely. But grief ignored performance, ignored schedules. People needed connection more than efficiency. Before either could speak again, shouting erupted near the lobby entrance. Daniel rushed outside instantly. A young man stood near the doors panicking violently while volunteers tried calming him. His hands shook uncontrollably. I lost my apartment, he yelled. I got nowhere to go. The room tensed. Daniel approached slowly. Hey, look at me. The man's breathing remained frantic. You're safe here, Daniel said gently. No, I'm not, the man shouted. Nobody keeps people like me around. Without hesitation, Daniel stepped forward and hugged him tightly. The entire room fell silent. And suddenly the young man collapsed into sobs against his shoulder like someone who had spent years carrying pain alone. Vanessa watched from across the room completely motionless. Because in all her years leading billion-dollar meetings, nobody had ever taught her the power of simply making another human feel safe. Not productive, not profitable, safe. Hours later, after everyone left, Vanessa stood beside the entrance preparing to leave. Snow had started falling softly outside. I used to think this place was for failures, she admitted quietly. Daniel locked the front doors beside her. Most broken people aren't failures. He glanced back toward the warm building behind them. Usually they're just people who lost support at the worst possible moment. Vanessa looked through the glass at volunteers cleaning tables while Sophie slept on a couch near the Christmas lights. Then tears finally slipped down her face. Not dramatic tears. Quiet ones. The kind that arrive when someone finally realizes success means nothing if nobody feels loved standing beside you. And in the silence of that snowy Seattle night, Vanessa Vance understood the truth: too late for comfort but not too late for change. The strongest people in the world are not the ones who rise above others. They are the ones who reach back down and refuse to leave anyone behind.